Time now to get the latest trends in dive retailing, travel, and training with Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Now, here's your host, Scuba Radio's Greg the Dive Master.
And that is me. I am here to help, host this Level Up podcast. Of course, you can check out Scuba Radio every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern. However, today it's dive industry stuff with my good buddy, Willie Klein, and his son, Britton. Willie, how you doing? Britton,
hey,
how are you guys?
We are doing great here in Texas. Great.
Yes.
Doing great.
Well, it's warming up a little bit here in Florida where I'm at. So I don't know if that's the case for you, but it's good, it's bad, it's good. It depends on the day. We're flipping back and forth, but
I gotcha.
The only way it'd be better is if we were going scuba diving. So we're at least going to talk about it a little bit today. So
And we got a great show planned for this. This is going to be a great show. I'm really excited about our articles and about the speakers we've got, so our writers. So before we jump into it, though, Greg, I want Britton to talk a little about our newest podcast. We are doing a new podcast. So, Britton, I'll let you describe what it is and when we do it. And it's a little different than this.
All right.
Definitely. Yeah, it is a little bit different, but I'm very excited to introduce Marketing Minutes. It's our brand new weekly series that we've been working on. It is different. It's a shorter 5 to 10 minute focused podcast where we're talking with leaders in the dive industry about what's working in marketing, branding, and business strategies as well. But so far, we've had amazing conversations with Wayne Brown from Aggressor Adventures, Neil Watson from Bimini Scuba, and Carl Hamuch from FogX. But I'm really, really thrilled again to be introducing Marketing Minutes. Coming up next Monday, we have at 1 p.m., we're doing a episode with Suze Martinez from Scuba Durag.
Oh, yeah.
A U.S. manufacturer.
I know Suze. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really a cool program because it's just a 5 to 6, 7 minute program. We had Jim Gunderson from SEI on yesterday, and it's really focused on that particular company versus the podcast. This is an editorial product that's designed to go into the issues more, the discussion more, whereas the Little Marketing Minutes is just really, truly a business focused kind of podcast, and Britton's kind of our lead host of it. It's been a fun little project. I got to tell you, we announced it. Was it Britton on the 28th? I think it was
28th.
to about I don't know, a dozen or so, half a dozen companies, advertisers, not advertisers, just companies that we thought would be interesting to have on the show. We booked 10 weeks and 72 and probably 48 hours. So yeah, it's been great, and we just booked. In fact, I think our 11th week today, which was Scarman, I think came in. So
well, there you go. So it's designed obviously as an offshoot of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, but that element is live, right? So it's 1 o'clock Central Time, right?
It's painfully live.
Yeah.
And poor Wayne. I mean, he had to suffer through the first one. Oh my God! Yeah. We simulcast on our Facebook business, our Facebook personal page, and then Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. It's about 3,000 dive professionals live. To the audience, so it's a big audience. That's assuming everybody tunes in, which they don't. But just saying, the potential audience is there, and then it lives forever in our content. So if you get a chance and you're listening to this podcast, go check it out. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah,
it's
so
very
that's
different.
Mondays, 1 o'clock Central, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mondays, 1 o'clock, and every week we're upgrading a camera or a mic or something. It's like
doing
live without a net.
Something out.
Yes.
Just have such immense respect for you, Greg, for what you go through every week.
That's the thing when you're doing it live.
Live radio.
It's you see all the mistakes.
Yeah,
and there can be quite a few of them.
Painfully live. So with that, let's kick off our first speaker here.
Yes, we have Gil Zeimer.
Very good.
First time ever. I got it right because he sent me his name phonetically.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty funny.
God bless you, Gil. So he's featured on page 16 of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine's latest issue, How Dive Clubs Can Be a Dive Retailer's Best Friend. So how can dive retailers use clubs to their benefit, Gil? Tell us.
Well, thanks for asking. Good to see everyone.
Yes.
Let me answer your question with another question. I often do that. Are you now, or have you ever been, a member of the dive club party?
Sure.
Because like clownfish and sea anemones, manta rays and remoras, turtles and cleaning stations, the symbiotic relationship between dive clubs and dive shops is a beautiful thing, and I think it's a real win-win for everyone. For me, because my wife doesn't dive clubs have been a godsend. And I earned my first PADI certification in 1985 when I was living in the Dallas area. And I moved to San Francisco a year later and joined my first dive club. I was still single then, so it instantly gave me access to a new group of friends, monthly meetings, dive buddies, trips, and parties. And I met a number of great people there, including Almost Nacombe was a member of that club. And we've been friends ever since. And then I started giving back to my club by writing their monthly newsletter and taking trips with them and soliciting prizes even for our annual Monterey shootout. And then once I got married, my non-diving wife was more than happy to have me go on trips with my dive club, arranged through our local dive shops. And it gave us both some much needed me time. In a marriage, you need that. And then later, when we moved to Marin County, I joined this club, Marin Scuba Club, and I still go on trips with them through our local dive clubs. Members of our club even just did a free diving class in San Francisco under the Golden Gate Bridge, ocean free diving through another dive shop that we're affiliated with. And at both dive clubs, we work closely with the dive shops. We invite them each once a year to come to our club to present and show us the latest gear that's out there from all the manufacturers, the latest breakthroughs, tell us about their upcoming trips, and we sign up for them. So, and also Marin Scuba Club is where Blue Friday originated with one of my dive buddies. So to fully answer your question, dive clubs and dive shops go hand in hand. They're married, and every shop should be affiliated with multiple dive clubs, and every dive club should be affiliated with multiple shops.
I like it.
That's great.
It's a good marriage for most of the time. Every once in a while, does it go off the rails? But you have makeup sex and everything's good, right?
What do you call it when you have 3 or 4 wives? Polygamy, right?
Oh,
so
hey
if
now.
you got if you got 3 or 4 clubs in one shop, there you go. So
well,
actually,
he is in California.
a little wild out there.
I couldn't help myself.
But for
Sorry.
my article, I had interviewed our friend Jeff Centropino, and he gave me some pointers that are in the article as well about how some clubs they're afraid of some members being poached from one club to another shop, but that happens.
Yeah, we used the dive club was a great way to keep people diving. We were a small shop, and we were teaching every weekend. We were working, and it was hard to take people diving. So we would push people towards the dive club to keep them diving, and it really worked out well for us that way. A great relationship.
Yeah. Well, I kind of look at ScubaRadio every week as a giant dive club.
Yeah, that's so true.
We're kind of poaching them all, I guess. But, you're like an umbrella scuba club, which is, dive club, just kind of like a dive shop would be in their local town in a way,
That's
right?
so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gil, for such a great article. And I'm going to do a preview next month. He's writing a great article for us on a chain of resorts that have diving that focus on the green aspect of our industry, the blue. This is continuing for the series. So
that's Gil Zeimer, by the way. Just so
there you go.
We get it out there
one more time. If anybody needs a good copywriter, this is one of the best right there is.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we got our good buddy Alex Brilski, I believe, and page 29 in Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, using sunscreen to do the right thing for the planet and your own health. So how are sunscreens now helping corals, Alex? What can you tell us?
I'll get to that, but a couple points I'd like to make beforehand. I had a great opportunity to spend an entire afternoon at Stream and Sea with Autumn, and her factory is only about 30 minutes away. And it was really enlightening. What a wonderful company that is. And I wanted to start off by talking about some misconceptions in this whole idea of reef safe, in that it means nothing. Although the FDA regulates sunscreen, the term reef safe is just a marketing ploy. And as evidence of their approach, they invested significantly in creating and having validated what they have introduced as a they call it the RDF, the Reef Development. I think it is, but anyway, it's a verification that a product is indeed not doing any harm to the reef. And so their hope is that more companies will adopt these criteria and truly make that reef safe indication meaningful. So that was kind of interesting as well. The other point that she made in my interview with her was that there are two types of sunscreen. There's a mineral based and there's chemical based. The chemical based formulas actually penetrate the skin, and there is concern about issues such as endocrine disruption, et cetera. Just getting into the bloodstream, et cetera. Whereas the mineral base essentially are just reflective. They don't penetrate if they're produced properly. And so there are some additional benefits above and beyond what I think most people realize. And of course, Stream and Sea has been around for quite a while. But this new initiative with Coral Care is really, really, really interesting. And I make the point in the article that we all strive to be low impact. And this is an opportunity to become what we term positive impact, because it's a win-win. It's a better product health-wise. And as I'll explain, it is also benefiting the environment, not just not doing damage. And what she did is she partnered with Dr. Michael Sweet, who's a very well-known microbial ecologist at the University of Derby in the UK, and they went through a experiment to test and verify the content and the efficacy. And in fact, his paper is in review now for peer publication, and they verified that the nutrients that they put into the formulation can promote the growth of corals anywhere from 8 to 25%. And so this is not hype by any stretch of the imagination. What they put in there, currently it's proprietary, but I think it will not be if it's published. These are minerals, it's not ground up krill or anything like that. And these are nutrients that indeed help coral grow. And I think that's an incredible accomplishment to show that not only can we not do harm, but we can actually do good in the process. I was extremely impressed, as I have long been with Autumn and her company. So it was a good education for me, and I think the viewers ought to check this out, because it, I think, can make a bit of a difference.
And speaking of understanding the ecology, Alex has authored a book called Beneath the Blue Planet, sold through the folks over at Reef Smart. If you don't have this in your library as a dive instructor or a dive shop, you need to go buy it. It's probably the best definitive guide I've ever seen on a layman's kind of explanation of the entire world that we love, which is the underwater world. So thank you, Alex, for that great book too, by the way. Thank you, Tech, for the commercial. I couldn't get the screenshot to come up, so
yes,
there it is. There it is. Yeah, there it is. So thank you, Alex.
I beat you to it, Alex. It's right behind me.
That's good.
Right
there.
there.
See, there you go. I got mine right over here. I'm looking at it, but I didn't want to get up. So thank you again. And that kind of brings us into a really cool segue. I had been contacted a couple of weeks ago by a gentleman by the name of Vincent Maurice. I guess that's how you pronounce your last name, right, Vincent?
That's pretty good.
Okay, good. Out of Guadalupe Island down in the Caribbean. And he has a company that specializes in helping people recover from mental issues using scuba diving. It's an interesting approach, and it turns out there's a lot of initiatives like this all over the world. But he happens to have a very sophisticated program. They even have certification and so on. So when he reached out to me, I thought, this is right up Dan's alley.
Whoa,
so,
are you saying Dan has some issues mentally?
Well,
I couldn't help myself, Dan. I'm sorry.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, it's so funny. So anyhow, they teamed up and wrote this really great article, and I'll let you go ahead and intro it there, Greg.
Yeah, well, Dan Orr is he's the man, and I can only kid because I've known him for so long. But
Legend in my own mind.
yeah, well, hey, you and me have that in common. But yeah, on page 7, you wrote an article involving this, the mental health benefits of scuba diving. So how has Maurice and you teamed up on this exactly, Dan?
Well, actually, it was a great team. I mean, we had an opportunity to work together, and I think we both put in a lot of effort into this article, and it really is a good article. I really enjoyed it. And it was really good working with Vincent. But as I said in the article, when I got out of the military, out of active duty in 1968, like a lot of other people, we were kind of struggling with a lot of issues, both physical and mental. And I went back to college and then learned how to be a scuba instructor. And then I started diving as often as I possibly could, and I felt different, being in the water. And then when I started teaching at the university, we had a lot of Vietnam veterans who were in that program, and they had a lot of issues too. And we would talk about those things in the evening and sometimes during the class. And they said they were feeling a little bit different, and I noticed a little bit of difference, with them during the scuba program, especially when they were out there in the open water. And so I thought, well, maybe there's something going on here. I approached the university. They weren't really interested in it because they didn't really see any relationship between any kind of benefit of scuba diving relative to the emotional issues some of these veterans were having. So I just kept working on it and trying to figure out what was going on and what I really needed to do to really help these veterans. And so since then, I've gotten involved with veterans organizations like Force Blue, and we use diving as part of their therapy to deal with PTSD and give them a mission focus, so they can not only help themselves emotionally, but also do some good for the environment. And it was a great opportunity to work with Vincent. So I'll let Vincent take it from here.
Thank you, Dan. So first of all, I would like to thank you, you and William, to let me have this work with you for the writing. So you guys will have to excuse my French accent, of course. So I will speak maybe a little bit slower than you do, guys, but I'm going to try to explain exactly what we've worked on since now almost 7 years. So 7 years ago, I set up this Baptismet company with a friend of mine. Used to be guys who were working in the bank, the banking, whatever. He's done a burnout, and at the same time, I was passing like a degree, what it's called a sophologist. It's pretty much the same that you do when you do meditation, actually. So it's like a meditation instructor, let's say that like this. And I had a chance to work underwater for my skiers, and just realized that working on those skills underwater was much more efficient than what I was able to see at the surface, actually. So at this time, we have a discussion with my friend, and we decide to set up a clinical trial and work with the French terrorist attacks survivors in 2015 in Paris. So we had like 34 of those guys with PTSD, and we set up a special diving protocol. Actually, the goal was not to dive anymore, but just using the benefits of diving to work on other skills. So at this time, I have developed a little bit, like I would say, about 40 different skills that comes from sport psychology, meditation, hypnosis, sophrology, and different kind of thing like this. And we try to bring those skills that we know that were already working at the surface, but we try to bring those skills underwater, because working in a naturally buoyant without any sound or radio, like a different stimuli that you can have at the surface, being in your just in your body and not thinking anymore the same way that you think at the surface. So there was an idea to say, let's try to have a special protocol and see how it works compared to normal diving. And we had really, really good results. So after this clinical trial, we published in some magazine, actually scientific magazine, and we've done another trial with the French military who were also suffering from PTSD. And also the last one we've done 2022 was on the people who were suffering from obesity, but it was like emotional eating. The goal was not to make those guys lose weight. It was to make sure that they are able to manage their emotion to not eating that much anymore. And we had a really good result also as well. The publishing is about to arrive really soon. So diving, we know that it works really good. All you guys, I heard you just before, and we know that going underwater works pretty well. And then we can use all the benefits of the blue earth, let's call it like this, and make sure that we can potentialize. I don't know if you can say that word in English, but it's like make things more efficient underwater, that you can work at the surface. Because, for example, doing meditation with a guy on PTSD at the surface, it's quite difficult to make those guys concentrate on themselves, because they are always in hypervigilance. But underwater, they just focus on themselves, and then we have this time to work with them. Actually, that was the French military guys that were telling us that underwater they were not thinking about their trauma anymore. And I say, you just gave us like 1 hour that we never had for the last past 2 years. 1 hour that we don't think about the trauma, people burning, dying, and everything. And that was a nice testimony for those guys, because we know that during the diving time, the brain is just working differently. 2 days ago, I had a meeting with a guy, it's a neuropsychologist, neuroscientific, from Canada, called Mario Borrega, and we're trying to work on how the consciousness works underwater. And we know that it works differently, actually. The cognition is really different. There's so many things that you can work underwater that you can't do at the surface, actually. So the Batismet protocol is set up like this. And I just come back from Canada, where we had our first instructor training 2 weeks ago. So that was nice as well. That's pretty much it.
So Vincent, if someone wants to learn how to do your program, I assume they can find all that out through your website?
Yeah, they can find the website, where the French one and an English one.
So when we publish this podcast, look in the comments under the timeline. We're going to have a link to his website, so people can find it very easily.
Yeah, I'm going to have to click on that myself. I mean, he just said, it allows you to shut out the noise, and I think any diver would know that after they've done it a while. But you just said that it'll help you lose weight. Oh boy!
Oh my! We've got a
$1 million idea right here.
We just figured out how to fix our industry. And Dan, also speaking of fix our industry, what was the book you just recently published? Because you also published something.
101 Tips for Recreational Scuba Divers.
And where can somebody find this book? Because I don't even have it.
Best Publishing.
Best Publishing. Okay.
We'll add something else. Whenever you send out a link to the magazine, I'll put that on my Facebook page. Well, I did that with this issue, this article, and a guy came on who's a scuba instructor, and he said he's experiencing the same things, that he gets that relief from the stress of everyday life by being underwater, and the more he goes underwater, the better he feels. So it really has gotten some resonance with a lot of people out there in the industry.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah. I've always said if more people scuba dive, we'd have no wars.
That's true.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice?
I think everybody happier.
So that's a great segment. Thank you, Dan and Vincent. And now I'm going to jump the gun, and I'm going to say, welcome back, Tech Clark, a.k.a. Who's that guy on TV that has the beard and is a mercenary or something? Anyway,
one of the happiest divers I know.
Happiest guy around, that's for sure. Thank you, Tech, for writing this great article. And I'm going to steal the thunder from Greg for a second. We talk as an industry all the time. I'm on the DEMA board of directors, and it's a constant conversation. How do we grow our industry? How to reach the next generation? And, you are doing that with what your programs are. And this article, everybody in the industry should read this article from Tech. Whether you're a manufacturer, you're a resort, liveaboard, it doesn't matter, retailer, because everybody's dealing with the generational issues right now in our industry. And this is absolutely brilliant. So, it's on page 24, How to Embrace Gen Z. And I'm not even going to ask a question, because there's so much to talk about in terms of Gen Z. And you bring some really great points to light in your article.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here with all of my friends and legends. You guys are awesome. The thing is that I've just been blessed to work at 4 different university dive programs over my career. And here the last 13 years, I've been right here at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I've worked with some of the most amazing young men and women. And what gets to me, and what was kind of the impetus for this, was that I hear so many people especially in our dive centers, that say, boy, I just can't take these Gen Z kids, and what's with them, and they're
And
pulling my
what's
hair out.
for everybody? What's the age of Gen Z you're referring to?
Yeah, so we're talking anywhere from 13 to 28-year-olds. So this is, that there
Britain.
you go, Britain.
Yeah.
So
Right
this
in
is
there.
that generation,
There
that's
you go.
1997 to 2012. And so forth. And what's interesting is, like, if we look around here, we've got, luckily there's nobody from the silent generation here, but otherwise you'd be really old. But we've got the boomers, we've got Gen X's like me, maybe a millennial
Post boomers too.
or
Yeah.
not.
The old
Yeah,
farts.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
I'm on the edge, so I'm not a baby boomer, I'm post boomer.
There
Yeah.
you go.
I always
There you
say
go.
I'm hip to their jive, and then they look at me oddly.
Yeah.
But I'm
Like
used to it.
dynamite, right?
But
Sorry, Tech.
the cool thing about that is that we've got this group that is very different, very different. And so some of the things that are so different about them is what we really need to embrace. And the first thing to do is just to understand. First of all, is like this group, their whole thing is diversity. Their whole thing is inclusiveness. They are what's called digital natives. That means they grew up with technology in their hand. And some of us are still trying to figure out how to use our iPhones, right? So, I mean, this is a very, very different group. Now, they also absolutely love to travel. They do social differently because the social is social media, and they will do that. And we could sit back and be like, you're on your phone too much. You play too many games, and we don't like that. And then the other thing is, we don't see, and a lot of complaints we get are like initiative. Oh, they don't take initiative. They don't see in advance. They kind of just wait and are back. But folks, here's the thing, is that, you really have to understand that this came from the parents, not the kids. And so there's a couple amazing books out there. The Coddling of the American Mind is one of them. Generation Z Unfiltered is another. And I reference these all the time because it's really that when you look at this, one of the authors put it this way, that you should be preparing your child for the road, not preparing the road for the child. And that's what happened. That's that term that you hear about snowplow parents and lawnmower parents, where they made everything easy on these kids. So here's the thing. In the two groups that we're going to be, that we're going to see this population in dive shops, dive centers, as dive professionals, we're going to see them as customers, and we're going to see them as potential staff and professionals ourselves, whether they're working with us or we're going to raise them up into the professions. That's our two groups here. And what we've got to understand is a couple things. On the prospective student side of the house, they love to travel. They are super frugal with their money, but they're good with their money. They will want discounts, but it's not a bad thing. They also respect authenticity, unlike any other group. And they love to have in-person time. The more connection you can have, the more your authenticity shows to them, and then they really appreciate that. That is an important piece. You also have to understand they love service learning. Anything that ties in with the environment or conservation that we can do within diving, they will go for it. Whether that's trips, training, just trust me, they absolutely go for that. And then on the work side of the house, here's the big thing. You might be right. This is the generation that is prone more to anxiety than any other generation, but they also need mentors. And a lot of this is because they are getting in that isolated space. They're getting in digital technology. They're getting in things. And then when they don't see to do something, it's because potentially at home they've been groomed away from having hardship and difficulty. You might be the mentor in their life, the coach in their life that they need to put them through some paces on challenging things, risk management, customer service. They're not used to it. Be that mentor, and I guarantee this will be one of your favorite populations that you could work with and have working for you and with you, and students. And they are our future, everybody. We need more of them at the DEMA show. And so embrace them. Embrace them. They're absolutely glorious people. I love them.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, that's good
Great,
stuff.
great. Yeah, and nice. Now I understand Britain a little bit more. Thanks.
Well,
Well, you know,
parenting problem happened there with Britain.
Well, you know, we just celebrated.
I don't know.
We just celebrated 28 years of Scuba Radio, and one of the questions I get a lot on the show, especially off the air, when people ask me, you know, how do you keep things fresh and that kind of thing, I go to the younger folks, and I was like, I've done a few things over the years. I've traveled quite a bit, and nothing gets me going more than taking someone who's never been there, like some of these younger folks, whether they're Gen Z or whatever, and just showing them the ropes, taking them under my fins, right?
Well,
and we feed off
yeah.
of that energy, and it keeps it fresh, you know, for someone like me that's been around the block a time or two. You think?
And they are such quick learners too.
Yep,
That
true.
is what's just sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's so true. You know, our marketing minutes is really born out of Britton's head. You know, he loves the podcast, but we wanted a way to connect in a different way with companies, and that's what it is. So you're right. There's so many great tips. And by the way, those two books you mentioned are in his article on page 25. Tech, we're also going to put those into our timestamp as well, because those are really great for references. So I appreciate that. Thanks again. And you are welcome to write for us every single month. I'm telling you.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Good stuff, Tech. Always. All right, moving on. Our next guest, Jeff Sincerapino. I got it out there barely.
Good job.
Yeah, page 26 in Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. POS systems, the heart of your operation. Now, POS, what it means to me and what it means to you might be totally different, Jeff. So, care to explain that one first?
We kind of use them interchangeably.
Okay. All right.
But that's okay. Yeah, POS, point of sale systems for us.
Okay.
For this article, that's what it's all about. And talking about Gen Z and things like that. If you walk into a dive shop and they still have a cash register behind the counter, you know what you're in for. But point of sale systems are really, I think, the heart of your operation. You're the soul as a dive shop owner. You bring the passion for diving there, but you need systems to really run the operation. And point of sale systems, they started out replacing the old cash register. Punch in the buttons, the drawer opens, things like that. Now they're all about completing the sales transaction and collecting the money and things like that, but they can be a whole lot more, from customer relationship management, inventory management, customer service, things along that line. And the Small Business Administration talks about it being one of the most critical investments you can make in a small business is your point of sale system. So there's some considerations to take in. You can go with a non-industry based generic solutions like Shopify or Lightspeed or things like that, Clover, or you can look for more industry specifics. And industry specifics give you a little bit more of an advantage in running your business. And for us, the big industry specific point of sale systems is Dive Shop 360. And Dive Shop 360, if you go to DEMA, you can see them there. There's not a lot of other point of sale systems that will be there for our industry, and they really came out of the dive shop world. It was built by a dive shop owner and ultimately morphed into this Dive Shop 360 point of sale system. But what it does, it's a end to end for you. It's industry specific. It allows you to not only do your normal sales, product, inventory management, and things like that, but also integrates things like courses, training, service, putting your service work requests in, things along that line. So industry specific is really something that a dive shop owner should be looking at, because we run 4 different unique businesses. We run a retail sales, we run a service, we run a travel, and we run a training department. So by integrating those 4 businesses together, we really get a lot out of it. But I think there's also some other things that I would say you need to really consider. Just like if you're signing up a new vendor or something like that, um, what's their technical support like? What are you going to get when you need to pick up the phone and you have a problem? Software systems sometimes have challenges, and you want somebody in your corner that's going to be there to pick up. You can pick up the phone, put a ticket in, and get your problem resolved quickly. The other thing about it is that they really understand the dive business and are making improvements all the time on that stuff. So I think there's considerations. You can certainly use the basic generic point of sale systems to run a dive shop. That's fine. You may have to work a little harder integrating some of the other things into the mix, but for even though we think we're a simple business, we are a complex business. A dive shop is a complex business, and the more you can get out of your point of sale systems, the better you can be. You're the soul of the operation. Your point of sale systems can be your heart of your operation.
I like
That's
it.
great, Jeff.
It's basically is the headline of the article making sure your POS system is not a POS. No, see, that's why I'm not the editor of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine.
That's great.
I'm sorry, Willie.
Thanks, Jeff.
It's just
That's
what I
okay.
do.
Great article. And I'm so excited next to get to talk about wine. Oh,
What?
Wine region. Sorry.
Ah, okay. And that brings us to Peter in Denmark. Is that right?
Yeah. Peter, by the way, publishes X-Ray magazine. And if you're listening to this and you're a dive professional, sign up for his magazine. It is fantastic. It really covers a lot of stuff that the mainstream magazines in this part of the world don't cover, of which I've tasked him to write a series. He's just done a brilliant job on Europe, because we think of Europe as a vacation place to go with your wife, to go to Rome or whatever. But yet there's fantastic diving all over the Mediterranean and Europe as a whole. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeff, to introduce Peter.
Yes. Well, Peter, page 13, you got an article in Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, Dive into Europe, Dive Tuscany, Italy. Usually we go there for food and wine, but we can go there for diving, evidently. Is that right?
Yeah, indeed.
Tell us about it.
Italy is probably one of the best combinations in terms of cuisine, culture, and diving that you can get. Characteristic for most of Europe is, as opposed to going on a dive trip to Far East Asia, where you go to a resort and just be based there and go there for the diving. I always encourage any traveler coming to Europe to divvy up the time between some land excursions, some history, some food, some shopping, general sightseeing, and some diving. Is that combination that is the strength. Italy, in particular, and it's difficult to cover just in one session or one article, because Europe is not one country, it's a continent comprising of 49 countries, and each country in turn, in particular Italy, is subdivided into former states, which were usually sort of the entities that used to battle one another for supremacy. National states only came into being much, much later. So all up and down the Italian coast, you will have different regions, separate states, with their different traditions of food, their specialties, and also different dive sites. The dive sites do not necessarily differ much because, I mean, it's all the Mediterranean, but there are some hot spots that have brilliant coral, very, very colorful coral. It's called black coral because it's used for jewelry, but it's actually bright red, yellow, very, very pretty. And you have a lot of very nice fishes and stuff, and it's not far behind Southeast Asia, I find it more interesting diving wise than the Red Sea. Tuscany in particular, I find it interesting because they got indeed some of the great wines, the Italian wines, right there, wineries, and you got cities like Bologna, Pisa, and the landscapes are just fantastic. Off the coast, you also have the island of Elba, where Napoleon spent his first imprisonment when he was first deposed. And just as a case in point of some of the very interesting history that you can see in Europe, what happened. Let me see if this one. I was just fading over a different picture, but it's not really going over. Oh, God damn it. Sorry.
It happens.
That went my presentation.
See, we need a Gen Zer to help out the technical side.
Yeah, Brayton could have sorted it for you.
Well, I have my OBS going here, and it's just presenting my nice slideshow here, but I still just see myself.
That's okay. That's
in the
fine.
window here. But here, maybe you can see it.
Oh, you found some
this
treasure.
Is a real treasure from a paddle steamer that was just full of gold that was sunk. Maybe I can hold up my iPad here so you can see it here.
Oh, wow.
That is real treasure, and this is one of the coins. It came from a paddle steamer that sunk in a storm carrying Napoleon's war chest.
Wow.
So that was excavated about 15 years ago, and I had the pleasure to actually go see it and see all this stuff come right out of those. And so this is silver, but it's all oxidized. I don't know how to clean it.
Yeah.
Here where I live, this is a flint tool. This is 13,000 years old. We can find this around our local dive sites in local.
Wow. And speaking of local,
you can't do that in any other place in the world, I believe.
Isn't there a
connection
spa?
between?
Isn't there a spa like northwest of Florence that I think you wrote about in the article where you can dive in an underground lake? Yeah,
it's inland. There is a spa in the mountains called Grotta di Usti. It's an old classical mansion, something like taken out of, essentially old movie. And inside this magnificent building, there's access to a cavern that has a subterranean spa, like mineral water, hot mineral water that bubbles up. So they do all spa treatments and bubbles. And you can actually also don some dive equipment and you can take a walk in these caverns underwater. It's like unlike anything else. And you don't wear fins. You just wear like beach shoes because you walk on the cliffs and they're a little bit abrasive. So you just walk around, and sometimes there will be an overhead compartment, but it's like a long cavern with stalagmites and stuff. And then you go out and you get a spa treatment and you go sit in a restaurant and you get fabulous Italian wines and food and stuff. So you can go around the area, base yourself, like as I suggested, rent a holiday home, vacation home from one of the renters and have a car, and you drive around visiting these different dive sites and you sample the food and the wine.
Sounds awful.
So Peter, let me get this right. So if I walk into my local dive store and I just sign up for a trip for my wife and I come home and say, honey, would you like to go to Tuscany and go on a dive trip? What do you think the odds she's going to probably say yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty smart, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're out there, think about Europe.
Yeah. What do you think, Alex? Yeah, Alex has his hand up. What do you think, Alex? You have a wife that wants to go to Tuscany?
We've been. Actually, let me explain. My friend and colleague, Fulvia Lamy, who founded SNSI, an Italian-based certification organization, invited us over about 3 or 4 years ago. And I spent 2 days diving Elba. They got me into a 7mm wetsuit. And it was, to me, it was reminiscent of California in terms of the environment more than the Caribbean, but it was quite unique and definitely worthwhile. I mean, the infrastructure on the island for scuba diving was amazing. I mean, the Italians are very much into scuba diving, and it was a great way because we went to Florence, we went to Lucca, we went to Siena, we went to Pisa.
Wonderful.
But the 2 days we spent on Elba were quite unique and distinct from being in Tuscany itself. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go to
Thank you,
Italy.
Peter. Great article. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little segue here, Greg, and this
Yep.
isn't on our script for today, but we're dedicating this issue to Barry and his wife, Ruth Gumblet. Most people in the industry might not know them, but for 25 years, they wrote for Dive Training. They wrote for Dive Industry, Dive Center Business Magazine. Very prolific photographers. And Barry actually was a 10th degree Taekwondo black belt and held here in Dallas an annual called the Big D competition that I actually competed in and got third place. But don't get too excited. There was only 3 of us competing, so in the class and the age I was. But anyhow, so I actually had gone to one of his tournaments years ago, and he was just a great people, lovely people, and you hope that when you leave this earth, that the industry remembers you.
Yeah.
And we're remembering him, and he's immortalized on page 17. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, also, Willie, just so everyone knows, all those famous magazine covers of the front and then the back side view on Dive Training, I think. If I'm not mistaken,
almost all of them.
Yeah, I think Barry did almost, more than any other photographer. So him and Ruth just did an amazing thing for the industry. Those always caught my eyes because you saw the front view and then you opened up the cover and you see the reverse view.
So creative.
Yes,
so creative.
Very fun.
So the last thing I'm going to mention, unless anybody says you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I did want to comment because I worked with Barry for almost 3 decades. And what always amazed me about him was with all of his martial prowess, sincerely, without any exaggeration, he was one of the nicest people I ever met in my life.
So true.
And he will absolutely be missed.
Yeah,
yes,
our hearts are with
kind person.
Ruth, for sure.
We always joke that we only saw each other if we were 1,000 miles away from home because we live 5 miles from each other here in Dallas. So, from the publisher this month, I wrote a really important article that I think is worth mentioning. The first thing that my good buddy Neil Watson asked when I told him we were going to do this magazine, he said, "Well, why?" Yeah, and
Hey, that's just for the record. That's better than what he told me about our show when he first started.
Good.
He told his buddy after he had, he was one of our first guests on Scuba Radio 28 years ago. And he immediately got off the air. I told him to call some other people, see if they'd come on. And he called up, I think, Captain Slate down in the Keys, says, "Hey, I just did an interview on this show called Scuba Radio with this guy, Greg. Super nice guy, but that'll never work."
Never work.
But he didn't tell me that. So
Right,
until
again.
5 years later, thank God.
So there's a lot of talk in our industry these days about the age of our divers, age of our certifications, the industry is aging out, and some people think that they're not dropping out, they're dropping off. I've heard that said before. But one only has to look at other industries that have embraced the age factor. And my favorite example is the golf industry. Do they really care that you're 73 years old and have to ride around in a golf cart because you can't really walk? Why? Because that's the only person that could probably afford a $150,000 a year golf membership. So, their industry, of course, always likes to have the new blood, but they've embraced the fact that they age and they've adapted to it. Almost all golf courses adapt to the older golfer. 40%, according to Demo, and I'm taking some of this out of Gil's article he ran last year on the Gray Tsunami, but 40% of the respondents that Demo found in an 8,700 diver survey a couple of years ago, in 23, showed that they're over the age of 55. And what's interesting, of course, is that when we asked them, and we specifically asked a question about what were the influences of how they made purchasing decisions for equipment and travel and all the, and 89% said that print magazines were a significant impact on their decision-making ability. We segmented that to look at just dive professionals. 599 respondents were either Dive Master, Dive Con, or above, depending upon your trained agency. I guess that'd be like 3-star CMOS. 42% said they rely on magazines. Keeping in mind that there is no other print trade magazine out there except for us, and we weren't even around when this survey was created. But a couple of really fascinating facts that I think that we all need to keep in mind. Divers that are 55 years old or older have 151% more friends than those aged 21 to 34 that are divers. They have They're 333% more likely to have purchased travel during their last visit to a dive shop. And they're 198% more likely to have completed all their certifications locally. So, I mean, these are just black and white facts that segment, even though it's something that I think in some circles we're worried about our industry aging out. Think, who can afford a $10,000 live aboard trip to the Maldives?
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of 24 or maybe even 32 because you're busy with young kids. And, it's only when you get in your 50s, you finally got teenagers or above, or if you start early, they're already young adults. Your career is the point you can take off 2 weeks to
They're
go
off
on a
the
dive.
Yeah,
payroll.
old guys
They're off
rule.
the payroll.
So anyhow, I just wanted to point that out. Please take a look. It's a great read, and it's a fascinating article. Greg, next month for our April issue, we have Wayne Brown's continuous business series, which has been fantastic on some incredible business insights. He wrote a book as well, and it's really kind of an outpouring of his mind and how he runs Aggressor. Al Hornsby, dear friend of all of us, great, brilliant man, has forgotten more about liability than most attorneys know in the world, is writing his continuous series on direct supervision next month. Dan is tackling a really critical problem, the lack of hyperbaric chambers that are just dwindling more and more. I don't know what we're going to do about this problem, if it's something we can fix. I already mentioned about Gil with his great article on a chain of resorts that are appealed, or dive resorts that actually are blue or conscious. And Alex is tackling sustainable seafood next month. So some really cool stuff we've got lined up. And of course, I'm going to pressure all of you guys to submit another article. Editorial is on the 10th. If you're listening to me, we'd love to have your submissions. And anybody have any last comments or questions before we wrap this baby up?
Well, I think you're really right about the older diver, because I do these older diver seminars regularly, and they're always filled, for one thing. Plus, also, as you mentioned, they have time on their hands, they have resources, and they have the interest. They want to be able to dive and dive as often as they possibly can.
I second that because I am one.
Well, and going back to the stats, 87.1% of the divers that are 55 or older indicated that a magazine was significant influence on their purchasing decisions. So they still read print.
Agreed.
Yes, Gil, you have a question?
Yeah. And I was never NITROC certified, but on my past dive trips with my club, I noticed I was coming up first and everyone was coming up 20, 30 minutes later. So at the age of 75, I got NITROC certified last month, because I'm going to Palau on Thursday and I want to stay down longer and see more. So you're never too old to learn a new trick.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, to reinforce, am I okay?
Yep.
To reinforce,
you're good.
To reinforce Greg's point as well, Mark Young, when Dive Training Magazine started back in 1991, sent me a preliminary copy for review. And he never lets me forget this. My kind response to him was, Mark, this is a really interesting idea, but it will never work.
And it lasted 30 years.
And it lasted only 30 years.
Only 30 years.
Right.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And Greg, thank you for being just an amazing co-producer of our show. I'm learning firsthand how incredibly difficult it is.
Well, it's all fun, and it's good to catch up with our fellow dive industry professionals.
Absolutely. Britt,
and the
you got
new
anything you want to close with?
New generation. No,
Nothing
that's it.
from
We
me.
covered it all. Gen Z.
You got it all.
Let's wrap it up.
I love it. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Level Up, the official podcast for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. I am Greg the Dive Master. Check out Scuba Radio every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern Time. But until next time, remember, it's always better down where it's wetter.
This has been Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Produced by Scuba Radio and the Klein Group. For more info, go to ScubaDivingIndustry.com.